Shalom. The Ten Commandments. What comes up for you when you think of the Ten Commandments? Do you think about two tablets with Hebrew scratched upon them? Do you think about Mount Sinai? Are you reminded of Charlton Heston, perhaps? Or more likely, Mel Brooks breaking the third tablet and ending up with only two? Few biblical moments are as iconic as the giving of the Big Ten. Yet each of us imagines the episode in somewhat different ways. The Torah describes it in great detail. On the third day, as morning dawned, there was thunder and lightning and a dense cloud upon the mountain and a very loud blast of the horn. And all the people who were in the camp trembled. Now, Mount Sinai was all in smoke, for the Eternal had come down upon it in fire. The smoke rose like a smoke of a kiln, and the whole mountain trembled violently. It's no wonder that this moment should be represented in culture so frequently, given the intensity of the language. It was a sight to behold. And also no surprise that God went through all that fuss to make it dramatic, because God knew that even for the Israelites, who had more direct reason to believe in God than most people, seeing is believing. And boy, did God give them a spectacle. But lest we think that seeing is what the people do next, God is quick to tell Moses, warn the people not to break through to the Eternal to look at God, lest many of them perish. Okay, well, there goes that idea. If seeing is believing, then the people are out of luck. There's got to be something else that they're supposed to do in relation to this God that they're about to encounter. Instead of seeing directly, the people end up listening. God articulates the Ten Commandments, and the very first thing we read about the people is that Kol ha'am ro'im et hakolot. They see the voices, the thunder of God. It's a little bit weird. Synesthetically, perhaps, they see sounds. Or as some have put it, the people wanted to see, but their primary experience is hearing. This blurring of seeing and hearing at the foot of Mount Sinai has yielded a library worth of rabbinic commentaries about what really happened when the Israelites received the Ten Commandments. But my favorite idea comes from the Mechilta de Rabbi Yishmael, which posits that this mixing of senses conveys that each individual absorbed the Ten Commandments according to their own individual abilities, their own tastes, fears, and desires. The Sfat Emet, the great Hasidic sage, wrote that with their very eyes, each one saw the part of the divine soul above that lives within them. They had no need to believe the commandments because they saw the voices of God in the plural. They saw different parts of God that were speaking just to them as individuals. Each of the Ten Commandments meant something slightly different to each Israelite. And so later, when the Israelites assert, all that God has commanded us, we will do, this means different things to each person. It's kind of wild to consider that the moment when all the people were gathered at Sinai, performing the ultimate collective Jewish act of receiving the covenant, it was also a moment that was deeply personal, tailored to every individual. They're accepting the covenant as one group, but having divergent individual experiences at the same time. The pluralist in me obviously loves this, that it's okay for different kinds of Jews to understand commandments in different ways. But this ancient reading goes even deeper than that. That same Hasidic master, the Sfat Emet, connects these 10 commandments to the 10 utterances of God in creating the world. The 10 utterances refer to the 10 times that God says, let there be, in the creation story. The Rabbi writes that just as all of creation was created in those 10 let there be's, so is all of Torah, all of the commandments, included within these 10 commandments. In other words, these 10 commandments are supposed to be symbolic of the 613 that appear throughout the Torah. From these flow all the others. And then he pivots to say that unlike the utterances of creation, which were fixed by God millennia ago, the commandments are constantly renewed by each of us when we perform them. Each time we observe Shabbat, for instance, we're saying that the commandment to do so is still meaningful to us as individuals. We create, or rather recreate, each commandment for ourselves. By renewing our commandments, by revisiting our actions and why we do what we do, we recreate our covenant with God and our relationship to our forebears, but we also recreate our lives every single day. This brings the Svat Emet to a text which we say each morning in the traditional liturgy. Uv tuvo mechadesh b'chol yom tamid ma'aseh v'reshit. In God's goodness, God renews each day the works of creation. By means of the commandments, by means of our behaviors, we can renew creation each day. Each time we do an action, we are recreating our relationship to that action. Each time we make breakfast, we're recreating our relationship to breakfast. And so too with Jewish tradition. Each time we observe Shabbat, we're recreating our relationship to Shabbat. Perhaps also our relationship to God and certainly to ourselves. And it's in this individualized recreating that we can hear or see or simply understand in the same personalized way as the Israelites at Mount Sinai who we are and what's expected of us. These days, while we're stuck at home, we're also creating something new. Though it may not feel like it all the time, we've reinvented our lives and we will continue to do so. And many of us wonder what life will be like post-pandemic. How will we recreate the things we once understood? But that process of recreation has already begun. We're doing it now, and we'll continue to do exactly that once this is all over. There's no point in trying to return to things as they were. Instead, we will continue to recreate and reimagine things with the knowledge that we've come to during these moments of isolation, these months and moments, this time of isolation. It was always true that each of us experiences the world as individuals. But the pandemic has forced us to grapple with the unique way in which we understand the experience of being alive. Each of us is called to do things differently from one another, and also differently, perhaps, from the last time that we read this parsha. What comes next for us when the pandemic ends will be the collective process of piecing together so many recreated people, to realize that as we've been so isolated in our experience, our lives have paralleled the experiences of so many others. Soon we will have to recreate a collective covenant. But before we get there, we need to see and hear and understand how to recreate ourselves as individuals. In some ways, we're all at Sinai right now, experiencing the same thing, yet in radically different ways from one another. We will get the chance to articulate what all of this means for us as a collective. But now, as we stand at this Sinai, our task is to see and hear and understand ourselves as individuals so that one day we can better understand the whole. Shabbat Shalom.